everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Miriam and today I am going to be showing you how to make a super cute quilted tote bag. So I have the bag here finished. This is what it will look like. So I'm going to show you how to make the block that creates this really simple, cute stripped quilt design. I'll also show you how to quilt it. If you look closely, there's quilting, and how to add the straps and the lining for the tote bag. So if that's something you're interested in learning how to do, go ahead and continue watching this video and enjoy. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. I try to answer questions pretty quickly when people ask them. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like. That really helps me out. And if you would like to subscribe to my channel, go ahead. I'm going to be doing different tutorials each week, and I'm very excited to show you what else I have planned. So without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. So this is what one of the sides of the tote bag is going to look like after we have quilted it. So as you can see, it's a very simple strip-based quilt block. And then I do some really fun straight line quilting, which I will show you how to do later on in this video. Here I just wanted to show you my workspace. I'm watching a little YouTube while I am creating this for you. So yeah, I just wanted to show you kind of my process. So this block is going to be an 18.5 by 18.5 inch block. And here I am showing you the back so you can see the quilting. You don't need an actual backing piece for the quilting process. So we're just going to set that aside. And here I have my strips cut out already. I have 3 of one fabric and then 2 of another. These strips are cut at 1 3/4 inch wide by the width of the fabric. And in total for this tote bag, you will need 9 of the red fabric and 6 of the yellow fabric. So here to create the strips, we're just going to sew the long strips together to create those blocks. So here I'm just gathering up my fabrics to take to the sewing machine and sewing those strips together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Unfortunately, in this section, I did not realize it, but my camera had moved down, so you can't see me actually stitching the strips together, but I'm just using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sewing all of these strips together. And now for the rest of this process, I'm just going to speed it up and play a little music in the background. Now I'm just flipping this over to show you the seams, and we are going to press the seams towards one side. So I'm just going to take this over to my ironing board and press it all to one side. So I did that, and you can see that here that all the seams are just going in one direction. It doesn't matter which direction you go, just have them all going in one direction so it all lays flat. So now we're going to cut our blocks from these strips. So I'm first going to cut off this excess fabric on the ends. Just going to line up my straight edge and snip that off. Now I'm going to use my ruler and line up the edge. So I am cutting 6.5 inch squares from these strips. So there's one, and you're going to get 6.5 inch square blocks from each set of these strips. going to take 9 of these 6.5-inch blocks, and I'm going to put them in my layout here. So I just have them one placed with horizontal yellow lines, and then vertical, and then horizontal, and then the next row I do the opposite, and that just kind of gives this really cool weaved look. So I'm just gonna do that layout so I can kind of visualize it and see what it's going to look like. And I'm gonna kind of separate the rows out, and then I'm just showing you're gonna sew the blocks together by row first. So here I just stack up the blocks by row, and then take those and stack them together, and I'm going to take them over to my sewing machine to sew them all together. Again, we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance to sew these blocks together, and here we go. Now that I've got all my rows sewn together, now we can sew the rows together to make the finished block. So I'm just going to take my first and second rows and make sure I'm grabbing the correct row. And then we're going to put them right sides together and use that 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew all the way down that side. This is a really great beginner-friendly sewing tutorial. Even if you're not super into quilting, this is a really fun project that you can make if you just kind of want to dabble into quilting and you don't really want to make an entire quilt. So there's the finished quilt top. I'm just going to take that to my ironing board and press it so everything's laying nice and flat. So now here I've got my batting. I had some leftover batting from other projects that I just sewed together to create Franken batting is what they call it. So there you can see I've got 3 little pieces that I sewed together to make my batting for this project. I'm just going to lay my little mini quilt top on top of the batting. You don't need backing for this since we're doing a lining for the bag. So I'm just kind of making sure it's laying completely flat on my batting. And then I'm just going to grab some safety pins and pin it in place just to make sure it doesn't shift while I am doing the quilting. So you can use safety pins, you could use a glue based if you wanted to do that, but safety pins is quick and easy, and they work great for a small project like this. So I just threw one in the middle and then one in each corner block just to kind of hold everything in place. And for this project, we're going to be doing a straight line quilting design that I really like. It's kind of like a crisscross straight line. It looks very modern and it gives the bag a really nice feel, and it just looks really, really nice. If you see what's that brand called? Vera Bradley bags. A lot of their bags have this this type of quilting done on them. So here I'm taking my Hera marker. If you're interested in a Hera marker, they are awesome. I will link it down in the description box below. And what I'm doing here is I'm lining up the 45-degree angle mark of my ruler with that bottom edge of the quilt. And that's going to help me do a 45-degree mark on the quilt top. So I'm just taking the hero marker and I am creating a little crease. So the hero marker is great because you can create a crease on the quilt without actually having to use any kind of pen or chalk or anything like that. And there I'm just lining up that first crease mark that I made. I lined it up with the 1.25" line of the ruler. So all of my marks are going to be 1.25" apart from each other. And I'm just gonna continue that process all the way up to that top corner of the little quilt. And then I just flip it around and do the same process, making those marks, and then I can just use my sewing machine and sew right along those lines. Super easy, super quick, and it really helps you have perfectly straight lines on your quilt projects. So here I'm just going to line my needle up with that first line that I made. Make sure to take the safety pins out before you stitch over them. That is very bad news if you do that on accident. And as you can see, as I'm quilting, I kind of have my hands on either side of the needle. I am not pulling the fabric with my hands. I'm just gently guiding it through. The feed dogs of my sewing machine are doing all the work. I'm just guiding it. And there's our first line. And now I'm just going to continue that process and stitch all of those lines with my sewing machine. There it is. It's so beautiful. So now I'm going to go back over to my workspace and do the exact same thing. I'm going to line up that 45-degree angle of the ruler with that bottom edge, and we're going to do it so now the lines are crisscrossing with the lines that we already quilted. And again, we're doing a 1.25" space apart between the lines. I'm just marking with my handy dandy hero marker. I love that thing. When I learned about it and I got one, it completely changed my quilting game. So I'm back at the sewing machine and I'm gonna keep on quilting. Okay, seriously, how good does that look? It never gets old. I love it. So now I'm just gonna trim off the excess from all of the edges of the little mini quilt. So I'm gonna trim it down so it is 18.5 by 18.5. And if for some reason you need to trim it down smaller, then you can go ahead and do that. Just trim both of your pieces, both of your sides of your tote bag so they're the same size. Now we're going to cut the squares for the lining. So I have this canvas that I bought. I think I bought an entire bolt of it when it was on sale at Joann's. And I really love using canvas for tote bag linings and handbag linings because it's just, it's very sturdy. It looks beautiful and it works really well as a bag lining. So here I'm just measuring this out on my cutting mat, and I'm going to cut, first I'm going to cut 18.5 by the width of fabric. So I'm just lining up my ruler and I'm going to cut that. Since the fabric is folded up so much, I have to do a few passes through. I probably need to change out my rotary blade. It's been a while. So there I have that cut. And yeah, I'm just gonna pin that in place real quick. I have these little mini bolts that my dad actually made me out of plastic that I use to store some of my fabric. So anyways, now I'm going to cut this long piece down further into my 18.5 inch squares. First, I'm going to cut off the selvage because I don't really want that on the inside of the bag. If you don't mind having the selvage in there, if you would like it in there, then don't cut it off. But I'm just going to trim that, and then I leave the fabric folded and I line it up with the 18.5 inch line of my cutting mat. See, it's still folded. And then I take my ruler and my rotary cutter and I just cut off that little extra chunk of fabric. So then I cut 2 squares at once for the lining, and then I know they're the exact same size. You can also use quilting cotton for the lining of the bag. You don't have to use canvas. I just like it. It's a more sturdy bag, and it adds to the structure of the overall tote bag. So now I'm going to take these 2 squares and I'm going to put them right sides together. This is very important. You want to put them right sides together. Just like that. Make sure that they're lined up perfectly. And now we're going to do this step that allows us to have a boxy bottom to our tote bag. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut out a 3-inch square from both of the bottom corners. So there I'm just lining up my ruler and I'm using a marking pen and just mark 3 inches on either side. And then I'm just grabbing my scissors and I'm cutting through both of the layers of fabric at the same time. And I like to use my scissors for this because I want it to be precise. I don't want to accidentally snip into that corner because then it can just kind of be messy that way. So I like to use my scissors so I can be very precise. I'm cutting both of those out. Now we're going to sew these pieces of fabric together. So we're going to sew all the way on one side, all the way on the bottom, and then on the last side we're going to do 2 separate stitch lines. So you'll see that here while I'm sewing. I sewed one line or one side, and then we just sewed the bottom, and now I'm just going to sew part way up on the second side and then stop, and then I'm going to do plenty of back stitching to hold those stitches in place. And then I'm going to jump forward about 4 or 5 inches, and then I'm going to finish up sewing that side. And that gap that we left is going to be very helpful later on when we're turning the bag right side out. So now we're going to take the corners and we're going to pinch there at that corner where we cut, and we're going to pull the sides apart and line up the two seams together in the center there, and we're going to stitch across that open side using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this is creating our beautiful boxy corners. So there I'm back stitching and making sure that those fabrics are laying flat. I like to back stitch a lot for this part just so nothing comes undone. So there you can see we stitched it across, and then we're going to do the same thing with the other side. So we're going to pinch there in the center and then pull it across. So then we have a straight line there. We line up those raw edges and make sure the seams meet in the center, and then we're going to stitch across that raw edge. I know it doesn't seem like it, but we are almost done here. We're doing great. And then we have our boxy corner. Now I'm going to set that aside for now. And now we're going to do the exact same thing we just did with the lining with the outside part of the tote bag. So I'm going to take my 2 quilted sides and place them right sides together. Line them up perfectly. And then we're going to cut out that 3-inch square from each corner, just like that. And now with the quilted outside of the bag, you just completely sew both sides and the bottom. You don't have to leave a gap. So here I'm sewing those, all three of those sides, and then we're gonna do the corners. So you pinch on that inside and pull out, and we line up the seams and then stitch along the raw edge. I try to do a nice close-up so you guys can see how to do this, because especially if you're a beginner, you know, you want to see it up close and personal how to do this stuff. So there we have our 2 bag pieces are finished. Now we just need to sew them together with our handles. So there I'm showing you the open gap on the lining. And then we're going to turn the lining piece right side out, just like that. And then I take the lining and we're going to put it inside of the quilted part of the bag that is still turned wrong side out. So you want them right sides together. Then I'm cutting the straps down to 34 inches long. I like a nice long strap. If you want a little bit shorter, you could cut them at like 30 inches, but I like a nice long strap. So here I'm just placing it inside. So when you're placing the strap, you want the strap in between the layers of the bag, just like that. So it's in between the quilted part and the lining. And you also want to place the straps inside the bag. You don't want them to be outside, because then they won't work. They'll be stuck inside the bag at the end. So I am just using some clips to clip the straps in place. I'm taking the second strap, figuring out how I want it, and then I just stick it inside the bag like that. And clip it into place. And there we have everything clipped, and now we're just going to sew all around the top of the bag using our 1/4 inch seam allowance. I was removing my table from my sewing machine, so it's a little easier to work the bag through. And now we're just going to go all the way around, sewing the pieces of the bag together. There it is. It's finished. Isn't it a beautiful bag? Now we're going to find that gap that we left, and we're going to pull all of the bag through that little gap. So that's why we wanted about a 4 or 5 inch gap, so it's large enough for the quilted portion of the bag to be pulled through. And just take this nice and slow. You don't want to rip it through because you don't want to accidentally rip those stitches or rip the fabric. So I'm just working it through just like that. Now we want to close up that gap. So you just fold the raw edges inside, and then I just top stitch that gap closed. It's on the inside of the bag. You're not going to see it. Just like that. So I top stitched it, and then go ahead and push the lining into the tote bag. Great camera work here, right? Oh my. So I've got that lining stuck in, and now we're just going to top stitch along the entire top of the bag just to hold those layers secure, and it gives the bag a really nice finished look then also. So I just kind of use my fingers and kind of roll that seam. You'll see me do that here pretty soon, but yeah, I'm just going to do a top stitch, which is using about an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance basically all around the top, and that's just finishing off that bag. And there we have it. Here is the bag. How cute is that? You could use this bag as a beach bag, a grocery shopping bag. Take it to the library and get a bunch of books. There's so many different things you could do with this bag. There's the inside. So cute. I love this quilt block. It's very modern and sleek looking. And that's what the bottom looks like. Pretty cute. The lines lined up perfectly. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you would like to, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when my next tutorial comes out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!